Israel Gaza Strip protesters in the Palestinian territories and Israel Jordanian, Lebanese and Syrian protesters Gaza Strip. 217 civilians and militants killed. 1,500 plus wounded. 6 drones destroyed West Bank. 26 Palestinians killed. 500 plus Palestinians injured. Lord riots. 1 Arab Israeli protester killed. East Jerusalem. 1,000 Palestinian protesters injured. 23 protesters arrested. A flare-up of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in May 2021 was marked by protests and rioting. Police riot control. Rocket attacks against Israel by Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. And Israeli airstrikes targeting the Gaza Strip. The renewed violence started on the 6th of May, when Palestinian protests began in Jerusalem over an anticipated decision of the Supreme Court of Israel on the eviction of 6 Palestinian families from Sheikh Jarrah, a neighborhood of occupied East Jerusalem. Under international law, the area, effectively annexed by Israel, is a part of the Palestinian territories that Israel currently holds under belligerent occupation. The protests quickly escalated into violent confrontations between Jewish and Palestinian protesters. On the 7th of May, Israeli police stormed the compound of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third holiest site in Islam, located on the Temple Mount, which is sacred in Judaism. The police used tear gas, rubber bullets and stun grenades against stone-throwing Palestinians. The violence coincided with Qadr night, observed by Muslims, and Jerusalem Day, an Israeli national holiday. The confrontations occurred ahead of a planned Jerusalem Day march by far-right Jewish nationalists. That was later cancelled. More than 300 people were injured, mostly Palestinians, drawing international condemnation. The Supreme Court ruling was then delayed for 30 days as the Attorney General of Israel, Avichai Mandelblit, sought to reduce tensions. On the 10th of May, after Israel ignored an ultimatum to remove their forces, 2 Palestinian militant groups, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, began firing rockets into Israel from the Gaza Strip, hitting multiple residences and a school. Israel began a campaign of airstrikes against Gaza. By the 16th of May, some 950 targeted attacks had demolished, completely or partially, 18 buildings including 4 high-rise towers, 40 schools and 4 hospitals, and also struck the Al-Sati refugee camp. By the 17th of May, the United Nations estimated that Israel had demolished 94 buildings in Gaza, comprising 461 housing and commercial units. As a result of the violence so far, at least 217 Palestinians have been killed, including 63 children, in Gaza by Israeli airstrikes. Palestinian rocket fire has killed 12 in Israel, including 1 child. On the 11th of May, the Israel Defense Forces said that at least 15 of the Palestinian casualties were confirmed members of Hamas, and also said that some Palestinian civilian casualties were caused by errant rocket launches within the Gaza Strip. As of the 12th of May 2021, both Israel and the Palestinian National Authority reported injuries for at least 300 Palestinians and 200 Israelis. As of the 18th of May 2021, at least 58,000 Palestinians have been displaced. Calls for a ceasefire were first proposed on the 13th of May by Hamas, but rejected by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. On the 18th of May, France, with Egypt and Jordan, announced the filing of a United Nations Security Council resolution for a ceasefire. On the night of the 13th of April, the beginning of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, an Israeli police squad raided the Haram al-Sharif and, brushing aside mosque attendants, severed the loudspeaker cables used to broadcast the Al-Aqsa Muezzin's ritual call to prayer so that the speech being delivered by President Reuven Rivlin below, at the Western Wall, for Memorial Day in Israel would not be disturbed. At the same time, they blocked off access to the Damascus Gate where Muslim worshippers congregate during the holiday. The barriers at the Damascus Gate were eventually removed some 2 weeks later in the wake of protests. On the 15th of April, a TikTok video of a Palestinian teen slapping an ultra-Orthodox Jewish man went viral, leading to several copycat incidents. The next day, Tens of thousands of Palestinian worshippers were turned away from Al-Aqsa. On the first Friday of Ramadan, when Israel imposed a 10,000-person limit on prayers at the mosque. On the same day, a rabbi was beaten in Jaffa, causing 2 days of protests. On the 22nd of April, the far-right Jewish supremacist group Lahawa held a march through Jerusalem chanting, "Death to Arabs." On the 23rd of April, after a fringe military groups fired 36 rockets at southern Israel, the IDF launched missiles at Hamas targets in the Gaza Strip. In the following days, a Palestinian boy and a 19-year-old Israeli settler were killed. On the 6th of May, the Israel police shot and killed 16-year-old Said Oder during a raid of Nablus in the West Bank. Itamar Ben-Gvir visited Sheikh Jarrah shortly before the clashes began, where he said that the houses belonged to Jews and told police to open fire on protesters.